portrait instead of landscape. Maybe because I really like this diagonal, which I'm just going to go ahead and throw it in there. So for that diagonal, the clouds are quite beautiful because it's such an overcast day. We're also, in case you're wondering, we're in Fredricksted in St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands, and this is on the west coast. Here in about 2 hours, we'll have a big old beautiful sunset. So, again, just very lightly, thinking about the shape, throwing in the coastline. What I believe is going to happen. For my water line, I really wanted to snake. My water line is going to be back here. Leaving me ample area to create this nice big tamarind, but also a nice spot in here to throw that flamboyant in. Grass I probably will throw in down here at the bottom. And I'm going to get to work. Usually, if I know where my spacing is, I kind of knock out the easy stuff like the sky. I'll put a very quick, since it's the lightest color that I really want to start with, I'll throw in like a light wash. Especially being that it's one of the lighter colors, I go ahead and put it in first. So that way I have less chance of getting it all super funky. And I put a little bit of just fresh water on here first. I like to keep it fairly wet. Which sometimes people that aren't like super into watercoloring, that hinders them from really exploring the media further because it feels like they can't control it when it's too wet. Which, if it feels too wet, just let it dry out a bit. Go to another area. There's a big old piece of canvas here. I want to balance this composition. So while that is doing that business, which is just like chilling up there, I'm going to go ahead and throw something down here to kind of give me a sense of my space and what I'm really going for. Once I have that, I have this line, I have my sense of motion going on, I have my direction of where I want my color to travel, then I'll have a better sense of what I'm really doing here. Again, as you can see, there's like this really big, tall grass. It's not super exciting. This tree I enjoy, but the tamarind and the flamboyant are lovely. I mean, the water is incredible. I am creating space for the water. I do believe that I am going to have this tamarind come through here, the flamboyant through here. The grass, I'm going to keep it very light, because I'm not super sure what I want to do with it. And I really think that most likely what's going to happen with this grass is it's going to be a light wash of something that's very similar, like as you can see, it's very similar in tonal value to that blue up above. So I'm going to do just a real quick light wash in this space to give me a feel of what I've got going on. I am going to do some directional lines, which I should have started with in the very first place, just to remind me of which way the wind is moving and about this overall feel of the space. I like very much that this grass area transitions to a more cooler or brighter yellow. So I'm going to throw that in on top. Maybe I'll regret it. Ah! Huge bumblebee! That's part of plein airing. I think he was just a fan and wanted to see what I was doing. So I'll just go ahead and kind of give that a little whooshy whooshy, washy washy around there. And then just so this doesn't feel so loose, I'll go ahead and just throw in a little bit more color. And that's okay that it fell through there. To me, I feel like watercolor is so forgiving that it's difficult when people complain about it and they're like, oh, it's so hard, because so much is just dabbing and feeling the space, playing with the colors. Like this is very wet because I had that drip. So kind of the dumbest thing I could do at this moment is to touch this too much. The more I touch this area, it's not going to add color back, even though I definitely have this kind of just faded out look. But if I touch that, it's just going to pull paper. And so I need to just accept it and move on to another area. So I'm thinking the other area that I'm going to move on to right now, I mean, the water is insane. It's so beautiful. The sound is so beautiful. I'm sure my voice is hindering that, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and kind of build in some of these tones. So it's pretty simple when it comes to most like Caribbean water. The background, the furthest, the deep, is going to have that like nice, thick Prussian blue, and then you're gonna fade into a more lovely, rich, translucent, like cerulean blue. And as you see it, you have this like nice transition with the sandy four areas where you have a murkiness, which is that added like kind of sandiness that goes into the cerulean. Then you have this beautiful Prussian, and then boom, it hits a cool gray cobalt. Those transitions are just like satisfying to your soul. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in. And again, I'm gonna keep it really nice and loose. I have found that I'm really enjoying exploring mixed media. So where I'm starting this off right now is a watercolor, I could go back in with colored pencils, markers, or even I found myself to take crayons to get bark or different like rough textures. Mainly I like being able to use mixed media for that reason, because you can create so many different texture variations and it's just really satisfying. So I'm going to start with the mid-ground in the water first, that's cerulean. I actually am using a little bit of cerulean with a teeny tad touch of some green, like straight Viridian. And I'm still not 100 on it, like satisfied. So I have about 3 different tonal values, but even though they're 3 slightly different tonal values, they are going to be the middle ground of my water. So I'm going to take them and see how well I like them. The water very much, like, which I love, has a slightly different feel in direction than the grass. This is something that really made me gravitate to this spot, is that the grass is all moving this way, but the water really is moving that way. And that those differences really creates a lot of interest. And for me as an artist, the main thing that I'm looking for is something that's interesting. So I am happy with that color. I am going to go in and kind of just throw in a little bit more here. I'm going to lighten it up a little here. Not quite the tone I wanted, but that's okay. And then I'm going to throw in my dark. And when it comes to that, I really am going to just like go for it, because I want a strong difference between the sky and the water. So I'm going ahead and throwing that in there. Also, for anyone who's watching this and they're not familiar with watercolor, it is almost impossible to reclaim white spaces. So if you lose your white space and you're like, oh no, I really wanted all those little highlights on the water and stuff like that, you're probably boned. No offense, sorry. But it's okay. It's all a learning lesson, and then the next time, you know. So now the little palette that I have, which this is just straight cerulean. This is that mixture of a bit of, this is straight Prussian. And then this is a bit of cerulean with a tiny bit of viridian. I'm now going to take, which again, this is mostly using my nice watercolors, a wee bit of my cheapies, which I think these might have come from Michael's or Hobby Lobby and were like $4. I like them. They are not as color fast, but they're convenient. And in addition to a better high quality watercolor, I think you get a nice product, like overall. So again, as you can see, I'm just kind of like throwing a little bit more tonal value on top of that. Some interest in brush stroke is always nice. So as you see, like there's a little bit of dry brush going on here. And I'll do a little bit more dry brush. If I keep my dry brush. There we go. I oftentimes, when I'm working as well, I have one clip here, but usually I have two clips. I can't find my other clip. I'll clip a small piece of paper here that's just for me to test colors on. Or if I'm like, oh, I want this nice swathy wash, I can test like, is my brush wet enough? Or if it's like, oh, I want some nice like firm lines, then I can test like, hey, what do I have going on my brush? Because sometimes you don't know until you touch the paper, and then you touch the paper and you're sad. So might as well have a little piece of paper to turn on. Oh, there's some nice little breeze for a second. Heck yeah. So again, I was going to put this in the water and instantly was like, no, don't do it. It's a trick, it's not the right tone, and I'm glad I did. That tonal value at my coastline for the water, I'm probably gonna have to think about it for a second. I think maybe something which might even has a bit of sienna might be nice. Here is a bit of sienna, which I'm gonna throw in here. And I want my strokes to fall towards the coast. Now, I really am just gonna do a blanket of some nice solid green. I don't want it to be too strong, not really an emerald, maybe closer to a sap green. And mainly I don't want it to be too strong because I'm just going to go in here and throw some color in so it's not so empty, because I don't really like empty. I'll throw it in here too. Actually, that doesn't really bother me, throwing in some of this in the water. Sometimes when different tones just don't feel right in your water, what you need to do is take tones from the environment. The water is really just reflecting the tones around it. So when you kind of think in that way, then you can kind of make things look and feel more realistic. These clouds are kind of funky. I want to keep them funky. I like big funky clouds. So I'm just throwing in a little bit of purple. I also am going to, again, take that purple, throw it down here in my water. I feel like it instantly says, hey, I'm reflective. And now I'm going to take clean water on my brush and just kind of give it some smushiness. Smush this baby around. Don't smush it like aggressively, because remember, we can tear our paper really easy, even good paper. Just smush it up, I got a good drip. Just smush it a bit. Smush it with the side. If you go in with the side of your brush, you're less likely to just make a big hole, you know. And I'm pretty happy with that. That's a good first layer. With clouds, I've really found to get the coolest, most prettiest looking clouds, it's best to let layers dry and then layer on top. Then you can actually get stuff that looks like it's dimensional. And that's what we're going for anyways, right? Sorry that I'm having to turn my paper where possibly y'all can't see it, even though this is the first time that we've done this, so maybe y'all can't see any of this, or maybe that thing's not even recording anymore, so who knows. Too many factors. Alright, now, since I've got that, I really need to go in here and add this part. I'm going to do a nice solid warm blue. And this blue I'm adding here is actually the same blue from below, but man, does it look different. Or at least I think, see look, now remember how wet this area was? I'm going back in with full water, and it's fine about it. Uh-oh. I kind of like this. It has a very like, it's about to rain or it just rained feeling. So when it comes to trees, for the most part I kind of put in big broad strokes, and then I go in later with ink and I do my branches and small things like that. I think it's more forgiving. So for this front tree, because he's in the front and he's like, hey girl, hey, I'm gonna make him bright. Maybe not that bright. I was about to throw in, like go with straight emerald, which I'm really loving the softness of the overall palette here. So I feel if I go in with straight Viridian, it's going to just be so erupt that it'll feel weird. So hopefully this will be not too weird. Okay, let's see. So over here is going to be this nice flamboyant. The flamboyant has the prettiest flowers, and it comes in different varieties. This one here has lovely bright orange flowers, but there's one on the other side of the property that has its really pretty yellow flowers. So one thing that I'm not sure that I like already once I put this shape down is this shape feels very similar to this shape, and the repetitiveness of the two shapes bothers me. It just feels not as interesting as it could be. And I don't want things that aren't as interesting as they could be. So I'm going to think, how do I make that shape not feel so much like this shape? I think maybe I could do a little bit of this. That's a little better. I also feel like maybe I could go in, I mean really, it's so forgiving. I know I want to go over the water because if I don't, it feels like unrealistic. So I think that's a pretty decent shape to begin with. The tamarind, you know, I might actually even leave out the tamarind tree. That flamboyant has such beautiful flowers on it that I might just put that in. So here's my pretty flamboyant. Now I am going to go with something a little bit brighter. Uh-oh. Kind of screwed up my, uh-oh. Okay, I'm sorry, I have to turn. This really, I should have put, I thought that this was something a bit cooler, but no way, man. It is bright. And it's great for my tree, because my tree is right out front and center, and it's like, hey, see me. But it is not good for that coastline, or that water line. So there is a pretty nice looking little tree right there. So let's fix that coastline, because woo, that's gonna bother me. So for the most part, I'm taking my brush and I'm getting out as much water as I possibly can, because I'm gonna try to be a surgeon. I'm gonna come above that paint line and just rub it down. And I rub a section and then I move to another section. I can always go over it once it's dry, but my first move is I'm gonna try to take as much of that tonal value out as possible. That's it. That's what I can do. That's all I can do right now. One thing, saying that's all I can do right now. So that's way too green. It really bothers me, but it's okay. It's there. I can take some more purple, which is my color that I'm using for my clouds, add it in here. And as I add it, it's gonna make that green feel less green, which is awesome. Because mainly what I want is I just don't want it to feel overpowering. There we go. So I will go in here once this is a little bit drier, and I'll add some more cobalt to break it down as well. Okay, so this, my sweet little tree. I've decided I'm not gonna put another little tree in there. So it's very easy for me to just go up in here, which I'm taking a little bit of green, some Viridian, some sap, and some Payne's gray. Make it something that's gonna be a shadow. I'm gonna throw it on top, here. Because this is the top of my hill. Throw it there. I don't want it to have too much white space, because I don't want it to be too much like that. I'm gonna pull it down in here. Because the less white space I have, the more it doesn't feel related to that tree. I'm also going to take it and throw it under here. So now it feels like that's background. There we go. Just throw it in down there. There we go. So what I am going to do is once this dries on top of it, I'm going to do a nice rich like orangey, sappy, green yellow and pop it out like the sun's shining on it, because the sun is shining this way and the only real yellow we have so far is down here. Alrighty. Let's go ahead, and I know I said that I usually do my tree with inks, but I'm really enjoying this process, so I'm going to go ahead and do my tree not with inks. I'm going to stick my tree right there. I don't know about you guys, but I always feel like my tree is wrong. Like, I have never done a tree ever that I was happy with. But again, also as an artist, we're like always good at not being happy with what we're doing. If you are happy with what you're doing, like, please leave a comment about how to be cool like that. So for the most part, and again also sometimes, I can't remember who it was that said this, maybe it was Francis Bacon, that said like, if you do a painting and you don't like it, leave it and then come back to it. Because you will look at it with fresh eyes, and when you look at it with fresh eyes, you might be like, oh man, why was I so moody about this? This is freaking awesome. Which I think that's the best thing about my home studio. You know, I leave things in my home studio and I'm like, oh, that was such a bad painting. And then when I come home, I'm like, oh my gosh, man, this looks so good. Why was I so moody? So I really want to put emphasis on the space. I didn't want to leave a lot of white space within my tree to begin with, like the cover, the foliage, because I didn't want it to feel empty. This though feels good. So this is my tree. There we go. We got a tree. How y'all feel about that, huh? And that's really, I mean, I don't think I'm gonna do super a lot more to it. I'm kind of happy with it. So there's my tree. You're welcome. I am going to go in and fix some crap. So some crap that I'm going to fix. This ocean. It needs more color. I mean, it just does. Throw that color on there. Something nice. Shows like how beautiful it is, how nice it would be. But you know, like as soon as we're done with this, I'm gonna go get in that water. I'm not in my bathing suit for nothing. Yeah, just really warming it up. I also find, even if it's not true to form, that all the water is coming in from this left side, it feels more balanced if I make it like that. And I'm really just taking a brush that I just put water on and finishing out this coastal plain down here at the bottom.